The highest standard confronts Aristo about their possessions, and he reveals his secrets, that his name is Raleigh Vermilion, and he is the son of one of the family's 3 leaders, called godchildren. He used to be an operative and wished to impress his father Contabile, but through a mishap with a magical gift he bought his father, his body was possessed for 2 years. While possessed, he had attacked his father and fled. He woke up in the Strikelands, ostracized from the family, and wants to know what happened before he returns. The possessions are his only clues as to what he did during that time. Lexi pieces together that it was this very same attack on Contabile that gave her a chance to escape. Recognizing that the seal on his body is a soul-stealing spell, it is theorized that while possessed, Raleigh encountered Satsumuru, but that the seal separated the spirit possessing him from his body instead of taking his soul outright. The highest standard opts to trust Raleigh, though Miriam is quietly affected by the knowledge that Raleigh was indirectly involved with the cave-in that killed his father. Pursuing Kyverium, the highest standard heads into the caverns and finds themselves in the Underdark. There they are sought out by a group of dark elves who claim their spider goddess sent visions of their arrival. The Dark Elves explain they were the remnants of a noble house that was part of the Congression of Cinerus Clade, a dark elf society that worshipped a titanic living mountain, and that their worship of another god was discovered and met with hostility. They were being hunted by noble House Alisfane's subordinate, Castel Vemoth, who had captured their matron, Nea Theresis Murpok. The highest standard aids the Dark Elves in getting Nea back, and in return they help them navigate the Underdark to find the Sahuagin cave. The party attacks it, but in their initial invasion, Raleigh is unfortunately killed. As the party mourns, Raleigh's patron Morganite appears and demands they turn over his ametrine apple. Fearing the Idolos, they do so, and Morganite leaves. The party stores Raleigh's body, determined to help him later, and rushes to save Kyverium. While the highest standard battles the Sahuagin to retrieve their gnomish ally, Raleigh's soul awakens in a void, trapped between life and death. He is confronted by Satsumuru, who notes that her soul-stealing mark finally properly kicked in when he died, and she questions where he took what Raleigh stole from her. Having no idea, she realizes he is not of the same mind as when they spoke. As penance for the crime of attacking her, stealing from her and fleeing, she leaves him in the mirror, along with 3 other captives, to have their soul's energy drained for her benefit. The other inhabitants are a young adult white dragon Satsumuru stole her castle from, a mute ice antique sorceress, Mary Mist, who was the queen's former student, and a Kitsadria, who had been tracking Raleigh for the family and got caught up in his ordeal with the Crystal Queen. This Kitsadria, Alzandi Hendrix, is revealed to be one of Lexi's siblings, and though his job was to assassinate Raleigh, he supposes they're in the same boat now. The highest standard rescues Kyverium and returns to the surface. They decide to approach the Silver Esper to aid Raleigh. They invoke the Esper, who takes interest in the group and notes they are individuals severed from predetermined chains of fate. She says she cannot help Raleigh unless his soul is freed from Satsumuru. As payment for returning the life of the villager's unborn daughter, making a gate to where Raleigh's soul is stored, and then reviving him, the group offers one of their final 2 ametrine apples, and to hunt an Idolos that is itself hunting the Silver Esper. An Idolos, it is revealed, is a creature an Eidolon has elevated to a state of deific power. They are not gods, but their life force is condensed into a crystal repository at their core, known as Sephirite, and they become immortal. They are thought of as the pinnacle of their species. Each Idolos is given a task to perform. Morganite, Raleigh's patron, was to keep the gods' artifacts out of mortal hands, and the one they are after, Hrock Lapi Silva, a basilisk Idolos, is to hunt down and consume anything that should not exist in the material plane. The party finds it and kills it. Its power, built up over its existence, becomes an idolic armament that binds to Lexi, forming a bracer. Its soul becomes Sephirite, which Vogan realizes can be used to conjure some of the beast's abilities. It would soon return to being the Idolos, however, so they return it to the Esper, who seals it. She then creates a gate to the Crystal Queen's castle in the Strikelands. The highest standard invades the castle to find Satsumuru is throwing a celebration of her recent conquests, so many different races and individuals are here. The group tries to blend in and encounters one of Summergrass's merchant lords, the Fire Primordia, Agravain Kinder. Vaguely recognizing the group as associates of Edragan, she helps them avoid detection briefly when the Crystal Queen almost discovers them. Splitting up, Miriam and Fenris find the Crystal Queen's bedchambers. Though it is perhaps an inopportune time, Miriam's flirting with the Shadar-Kai cleric causes her to confront him about if he's actually going to do anything, and the two unexpectedly impassioned heroes wind up breaking the Crystal Queen's bed, a result of a curse of misfortune Scandal had put on Miriam, which Fenris removes. Once they resolve that, they follow a note to a sealed chamber where Miriam finds a set of leather armor submerged in blood, and an ancient tablet speaking about old gods they don't recognize the names of. Miriam takes the armor, and they keep searching. While searching for Raleigh, the party discovers that Vogan's mentor, Almyra Elmonda, is being held captive here. They free her, and she says she came to see Satsumuru because they were old friends, but that Satsumuru had changed. She and her two ratfolk aides go with the party. They find the mirror Raleigh is trapped in and shatter it just as Satsumuru discovers them. The white dragon that was trapped attacks Satsumuru as the group flees, but it is killed in a single blow from the menacing queen. While they flee, they encounter Vogan's former hobgoblin captain, Lekazad, who had crippled Vogan and left him for dead before their troop joined the Crystal Queen. Dreading this reunion, Vogan finds clarity and support from his new friends, and together they defeat Lekazad. Joined by Merrymist and Alzandi, the highest standard barely manages to escape through the gate made by the esper. Once they return, the esper restores Raleigh to life. Alzandi notes that as long as he has his collar, he will be found by the family, and makes a deal with the esper. He trades his ability to stay in human form for more than a minute a day in return for his freedom from the family. Lexi tells Raleigh about her history in the family and about being Contabile's personal aide alongside another Kitsodria, Kevin, who went missing before she escaped. Alzandi tells both that when Raleigh fled, he stabbed Contabile with a Messite dagger, the inert one Raleigh now has, and that he has had amnesis since then. They've been tending to him, but he is fading, and the family is looking for ways to cure him. The highest standard are given the means to invoke the esper from anywhere if they wish, and they begin their journey back to Summergrass. When they finally arrive there, Miriam is greeted by Argo of the guild Iacane, who warns them a hit has been put out on them. Miriam takes this as a threat in good faith from the mercenary, and they reconnect with Edragan. Kyverium is put up within the city and asks the highest standard to return to Fort Deepwell to retrieve his research materials. As they leave, the guild returns to the Dragging Dagger and sees that a job has indeed been filed against them. A foreign queen has hired a mercenary group to track down a vague description of the highest standard, and Agravain Kinder has authorized the legal sanction of them, asking other guilds for help. The party concludes that Agravain must have been strong-armed when their deception against the Crystal Queen was revealed, and also that Satsumuru is most likely trying to retrieve the armor Miriam stole. The highest standard leaves to retrieve Kyverium's research, but when they arrive at Fort Deepwell, it has been overrun by the same amniotic scourge it suffered from before. The party breaks in to save who's left, but as they grab Kyverium's research, they are attacked by black draconic fiends, Abishai, acting on behalf of an unseen third party. They demand Kyverium's research, and when the party tricks them, they kill Miriam. Though he is revived by Fenris soon after, during his brief encounter with death, Miriam sees a vision of an elderly nobleman in an old castle, sitting alone and stirring in response to Miriam's presence. Just as they seem to recognize Miriam, he is revived and his soul returns. They return to Summergrass, and Edragan notes that the current High Lord of the country is retiring, and Edragan is hoping to be elected in his place. The party gets a lead that Quintus's horse Winchester was traded to members of the family, and they head to the countryside estate where he supposedly is being kept. When they arrive, they find the place is haunted, and clear the undead from it, only to find that the same undead influence exists here as in the town plagued by the Tree of Loathsome Nightmares. On the top floor, they find a dead man tied to a chair with a letter and gifts nearby. The letter is from one of the family's branches, the Unseen Hand, and addressed specifically to the highest standard. It states that they had worked with Merkwire but had parted ways, that they would like to meet soon to discuss what to do about him, and that they would leave an amulet to protect Miriam from Satsumaru's scrying as well as ownership of this estate. It states they would meet them soon, and the next night they would appear. Returning Winchester, the Unseen Hand's godchild appears to them, revealing herself to be Diane Canslager. Known by the name Empty Promise, she is one of the 3 leaders of the family. She and her organization had used Edragan's company as cover for their international black market, and she had hoped Edragan would be elected High Lord so she could act as his advisor. Since Contabile contracted amnesis, they had been stealing Kyverium's research to try to help him. But when Scandal tricked Kyverium and put his work in actual danger, they betrayed their arrangement. She also mentions that Merkwire himself has amnesis, which facilitated his interest in Kyverium's work, though his sword seemed to be regulating it. She now wanted to work together to stop Merkwire, their common enemy, and put the election back on track. Agreeing to not get in each other's way, they separate. While this is going on, some members of the highest standard stumble onto the site of an attack. Civilians have been left alive but vacant and unconscious in the roads, with a strange single-wheeled track leading up to them. The victims each have a blade-like puncture wound that should be fatal, but seems to be cauterized. Their bodies are taken to the Temple of the Four, where the priests tell them that soulless have been turning up a lot recently, all in this same condition. While there, Argo encounters Miriam outside and talks with him politely, joking about how he's going to get around to capturing him. Miriam remains cautious, but Argo's demeanor gives off a confusingly lax intent. Soon after, the highest standard is attacked by other guilds seeking their bounty. First, the members of Scabbard attack, the magic-destroying sniper tiefling Blister Voss Windrake, and the Sun Monk fire antique Fume White. They are defeated and Fume captured, who they hold for a while. He says it's not personal, and Miriam reminds the group that he's operating legally, so killing him would make them actual criminals. Fume notes that he and Blister used to be in Argo's guild, Iocane, before they became wary of Argo's devil-may-care attitude and penchant for suicide missions. Knowing the only way to end this is to dispatch the mercenaries Satsumaru sent after them, they release the ever-polite Fume and head to where they believe the Crystal Queen's agents are. On the way, the party is attacked by Blister again, this time accompanied by Iocane's members, the cleric of Vestige, Argo, and the fist-fighting brawler Tantia Vario. The highest standard manages to capture Blister and Argo, but Tantia knocks out and flees with Fenris. The highest standard and Iocane members are left unconscious, but one of Elmira's rat folk attendants, Fallsbin, manages to wake up the highest standard. They are also protected by Winchester. The group interrogates Argo when he wakes up and convinces him to take them to the mercenaries hiring them. Unknown to them, Fenris awakens elsewhere with Tantia, and the two immediately hit it off. Tantia notes that she and Argo actually have a grudge against Satsumaru for killing Argo's parents when he was young, and this was a ploy to eventually lure her out. The two agree to work together and team up on the mercenaries. The main group, still believing Argo to be their enemy, invade the mercenary base and confront them, thinking Fenris would be kept there. They face Satsumaru's werewolf subordinates, and the appearance of Tantia and Fenris on their side helps them overwhelm them. In the final hour, Satsumaru teleports the same white dragon she had killed, now revived but wingless, into the base to face them under the promise of being restored and freed if it kills them. As they fight, Miriam's armor, known as Deus Yankovic, undergoes some sort of awakening and transforms, granting him illusory abilities. They defeat the dragon, reconcile with Iocane, and head to the surface in time to see an adult bronze dragon land and investigate the noise. It observes the scene, then leaves. Miriam guesses it came in response to the white dragon appearing, and that someone within Summergrass was probably that dragon in disguise. Lyra meets up with the highest standard with a lead on Merkwire's location, that he's digging a tunnel under the city from outside. She suspects a merchant lord is backing Merkwire, but doesn't know which or to what end. they find the tunnel and invade it, defeating Knowles on the way in. But when she is almost killed, Lyra reveals she has the power of a sorceress running through her veins. Because Retia fears powerful magic and their fears are enforced by the Academy's magic sealing methods, she keeps this a secret. The group laments the magic-fearing ways of their society before swearing themselves to secrecy and moving on. Within the tunnel, they find the outer gates of a vault with the symbol of Vestige on its door. Miriam touches it, causing its star ruby sigils to light up, a phenomenon that has occurred any time Miriam touches a star ruby, and the vault opens. The party is warned at its entrance that the vault contains the essence of an ancient archfiend, an evil queen of dragons, which the Eidolons had sealed here to protect the world. The arcane recording identifies itself as the voice of the Nephilim, who built this vault for Vestige. The party plunges into the dungeon-like vault, meeting an androsphinx named Vendricus that tests them, and when they succeed, it offers them its knowledge. As it's questioned, several things are revealed. That first, amnesis is not a typical disease, and is in fact the result of a divine being awakening from its ancient slumber and reaching out to the world for knowledge, but it is overreaching and stealing memories instead of reading them. Second, there is a traitor who contributed to Quintus's father Lucian Vanderbilt's untimely death. And third, that Fenris's lost family is trapped in a state of suspended animation, along with many other members of the Druidic races persecuted during the Palvarian witch hunts from a century before, and that they were trapped in a false reality. Proceeding from here, the highest standard arrives in a central chamber where a colossal piece of red sephirite hangs from the ceiling. Merkwire stands there, carrying the hammer of Constantinian Winter he stole from Quintus's family, and Scandal is with him. Merkwire states he plans to use the sephirite to gain power, and that he wants to create a land where Druidic races are not discriminated against. And he wants to do this by enforcing the rule of the strong over the weak. In his mind, if he stands at the top, he can enforce a fair and just rule. Though his ideal world appeals to Miriam and Fenris, they cannot abide by his methods, and so attack him. As they fight, the Idolos called Orbis Maharaga falls from the chamber ceiling. This massive behir protects the sephirite here, and engages in three-way combat between the groups. It is eventually felled, but the weakened party is once again beaten down by Merkwire. His sword conjures up amniotic mists, and things look dire for the party. However, in their darkest hour, a sublime figure appears to them. A woman named the Pale Lady manifests. Fenris, who had dreamed of her for most of her life and secretly worships her, recognizes her immediately and pledges herself to her. The Pale Lady speaks to the incapacitated Orbis Maharaga, who seems to obey her, and allows his body to become an idolic armament that binds itself to Vogan, a blade with the power of lightning. She also calls the Hammer of Constantinian Winter over to Fenris, presenting it to her, and it undergoes an awakening similar to Miriam's armor. The hammer commands the power of ice, and has a massive sapphire for a hammerhead. The Pale Lady commands Fenris to find her, then vanishes. As Fenris and Vogan use their new armaments to fight Merkwire, Scandal turns against the Dragonborn and destroys the sephirite in the chamber, releasing 5 chromatic fiendish essences within. Merkwire's arm is terribly wounded by Fenris's hammer, and as the vault collapses, Merkwire is defeated and falls down into the darkness below. The party seems to be trapped in the collapsing vault, but they awaken above ground, with a feather from the silver esper falling among them. Vogan's old sword is missing, having been taken in exchange for saving them. Seemingly as a token of good faith, Lyra finds her violin had been returned to her by Scandal, who presumably teleported away. The highest standard celebrates their victory over Merkwire, and though the Hammer of Constantinian Winter belongs to Quintus's family, he names Fenris the champion of the Vanderbilts and permits her to keep it in her possession. Allowing themselves some rest, the highest standard decides to compose themselves until they receive an invitation to meet the High Lord of Mott, the Merchant Lord Morian Hollow. Preparing for this meeting, Raleigh communes with his patron Morganite, who commands him to seize Deus Yankovic and the Hammer of Constantinian Winter from the party and return them to him, which causes him to realize his presence in the party is putting them in danger. On the day they head to meet with the High Lord, Raleigh decides he will spend some time on his own investigating the events he's discovered his connection to, and separates from the party before they meet with the High Lord.